On the behalf of the Committee on MSME and Startup, I welcome our today's speaker, Arnav Chakravarti, to give you our special time for us for the today webinar. And I give the introduction of him, first of all. Anna started his career with the ICICI Bank and with Standard Chartered Bank in Mumbai, and then went on to establish, develop, and head an India desk for the Griva-based bank before setting up IBF in 2008 and Amtrak India Foundation in 2015. Anna Chakravarti is an investment banker turned social entrepreneur. As India Director of the United Nations flagship capacity building program, Amtrak, Anna work with government bank, large corporation, chamber of commerce, etc. in India to promote a culture of entrepreneurship in keeping with UN sustainability agenda. He is founder director of International Business Federators (IBF), not for profit entity based in Geneva, and Amtrak India Foundation (EIF), a non-profit civil society organization based in Kolkata. So I requested our today's speaker, please give your session for our webinar and give your special time for us.
Many thanks indeed for the invitation and for the introduction. Thank you, Devang. Yes, as you mentioned, I happen to represent a program on entrepreneurship development, and I've been working on this program for about 15 years now. And one of the important learnings for me personally while I was in Geneva working with a bank and trying to promote entrepreneurship in the within the startup community was the fact that entrepreneurship has an aspect of skills that are very important. I need to know the business that I intend to get into and I intend to promote and run. But what is perhaps even more important than skills is competencies. And competencies are nothing but a set of behaviors. How is it that I'd behave? How is it that an entrepreneur would behave with other entrepreneurs, with his or her own members of the team, with partners, with investors, with service providers, etc. I think those behaviors are extremely important. And so during my career in banking, I realized firsthand, I understood firsthand the importance of these behaviors. And gradually, I could see that behaviors were not just important in the professional setting, but they were also important in personal decision making and in the way we make choices, take judgment calls in decision making, big or small, in the course of our own journeys. Entrepreneurship, of course, is extremely important in the context of decision making and and choice making and making judgment calls. Of course, entrepreneurship has a heavy reliance on these things. But even outside of entrepreneurship, in the course of my being able to operate my own life, my own existence, being able to philosophize, being able to understand what kind of decisions should be taken is extremely important. So I'm going to break my session today, uh, thanking you again for the opportunity, into three parts. The first part would be around uh, decision making and competencies in keeping with the UN framework called Empretec. Empretec is Emprendedore Tecnologia, or technology for entrepreneurship. And if you were to go to the United Nations website, I'm just going to share with you the website in a moment, so you can research the uh, the tremendous amount of information that the UN has put together in this area and put some of that to use in your own business development. So that's the first part. The second part would be to look at some very practical applications of these behaviors. So first, we understand the behaviors and the competency framework. And second, we try and look at some practical applications of this in designing our own businesses and developing our own businesses. So I'll talk about some very specific examples there of work that we are doing in underserved, underdeveloped areas in India and also in the world. We operate in about 50 countries worldwide, and most of these are developing countries. In fact, all of these are developing and least developed countries. They're south of equator countries. And so there is a tremendous possibility and an opportunity here for chartered accountants and other professionals offering services to entrepreneurs to get involved. There are about 500,000 entrepreneurs in the Empretech network worldwide. In Brazil and Argentina, you have the largest system. The India program was requested about 12 years ago, and we're in the early stages because it takes about 20 years to install a program of this nature, which is based on philosophy and psychology and mindset development for entrepreneurship. So that's going to be the second part of the presentation. And the third part would be, I think I'd leave it open to questions because we don't have a very lot of, I don't imagine a lot of time to be left over. But I'd like to take some questions and observations, and I'd request Devang to help me coordinate with your invitees.
Yes,
Uh,
Anuj, definitely.
and we'll see if we can address some questions you may have. And these questions
Yeah,
can
sure.
be direct, very direct in terms of how do I get involved in the program? How do I benefit from the program? That kind of questions. Or they could be general questions in terms of, what should I do when I'm faced with choices of this nature? Uh, Great. So let me start with the Epitech program, and the program that I happen to represent, as I mentioned earlier, happens to be a United Nations program on entrepreneurship development. Let me quickly take you to the UN website. This is the United Nations Trade and Development uh, website. I hope you can see my screen. You can now, Devang? Yes, okay. Just
Yes,
wanted to
sir.
check.
Yeah, it's
And
visible now.
if you go on to about and you go on to topics of work, you would see there is a mention of various areas that address sustainable economic growth so that no one gets left behind. So this is really about the SDGs of the United Nations, and we would also know that SDGs are becoming increasingly important in reporting in companies, big and small, today. So you'd see quite a few areas of interest. I won't have the time to cover all of these. I'll just take you very quickly through enterprise development, which is entrepreneurship and MSME in your scheme of things. I understand it's a committee of MSMEs and entrepreneurship that's organizing this webinar. So this is about helping countries help their SMEs, small and medium enterprises, grow in a sustainable manner and compete in the global economy. And it's not just about growing these SMEs, it's also about starting up these SMEs. And the first thing that you would want to do when you start up an MSME is to look at the cultural setting of the MSME. Why is the MSME in business? Why does it want to be in business? What does it want to do vis-a-vis its competition? What's the unique selling proposition of the entrepreneur and the organization? So there's some effort that goes into establishing the purpose of the MSME. Now, so far as the Empretech program is concerned, it's trained over 500,000 MSMEs. It's been mentioned here, over 34 years. It's close to about 35 years. Also, this is a program that's mentioned in the United Nations General Assembly. I'm not going to take you here, but when you get an opportunity, please look up the UNGA resolutions. You'll see that Empretech is mentioned as a program that helps uh, promote behavioral changes. And this is what is mentioned here, promoting behavioral changes that helps entrepreneurs put their ideas into action and helps fledgling businesses to grow. So the objective is to develop a set of competencies. Now, I mentioned competencies rather than traditional business skills. How is competencies different from business skills is something you might wonder at this time. So competencies is what makes someone competent to be able to address a problem or an opportunity. So when you're talking about a competent individual, you're basically referring to a set of behaviors plus traditional business skills. So you're not just referring to skills, you're also referring to certain behaviors which could be put into some kind of a practice as well that can be acquired and applied by entrepreneurs. So this becomes important. Application. It's not just about learning and knowing about the competencies, it's about putting them to use. So in the Empretech system, there are 600 local trainers. We have 30 international master trainers, and trainers importantly uh, are from the world of entrepreneurship. They're entrepreneurs themselves. Why would this be important? It's important because you would see that, for example, if you're promoting a certain business, it helps to come from that business, to know about that business. So if you're promoting entrepreneurship, it helps to have an entrepreneur train you to go on to become an entrepreneur, whether it's social entrepreneurship or for-profit business. So MSMEs are important. Youth entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs. Now, youth entrepreneurship also is part of a program that we run called the YEP, the Youth Entrepreneurship Program. So we work with young people who wish to set up career in entrepreneurship, and we try and present opportunities for them to get involved in internships and apprenticeships. In the chartered accountants community, I understand that internship is extremely important. So, in fact, that's where there's a lot of learning that happens. Practical learning, learning on the job. So that's something that we regard in the world of entrepreneurship. We think entrepreneurship is also a practice. It's not something that can be picked up by reading a book. Okay, so that's the cultural piece. Then, very quickly, the business linkages piece. Now, this is where chartered accountants could come in as very, very useful, contributors to the development process, because this really involves creation and development of linkages between large companies and SMEs in developing countries. Right? So the program is based on the mutual self-interest of all actors, and we're looking at ways in which access to international markets, finance, technology, management skills, and specialized knowledge could be made available for the upgradation of domestic enterprises. Okay, so their transnationals usually get involved in Empretech systems. They ask the Empretech Center to organize a system of let's say, or a set of training workshops for entrepreneurs, so that the entrepreneurs could get into the value chains of larger companies. So there is a job creation interest in governments. So the governments are more interested in bringing in the appropriate technologies that can make use of competitive, the competitive setting of certain geographies. And you have transnationals that are interested in setting up a system of entrepreneurs and getting involved in outsourcing or increasing profitability and various quality benchmarks with respect to competitiveness and resilience. And then you have the SME interest. SMEs are interested in increasing sales and looking at some technical input and also improving competitiveness and product standards, etc. So the program basically sits in the middle and brings all these actors together. That's what the program does. That's Empretech for you in a nutshell. I'd also like to share with you a quick presentation on Empretech. Let me just Okay, let me also tell you a little about what we're doing in India. Empretech is Emprendedores Technology, as I mentioned to you. This is a coming together of two Spanish words. In India, we've developed on the Empretech program and set up the HERA program. HERA is is an extension, and it's a local context development of the Empretech program, in a manner of speaking. So high impact entrepreneurs from emerging regions. One of the reasons for this is because in India, the focus is not so much on numbers. We're not looking at thousands and hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs to develop in the country. We're looking at very, very few, and we're looking at those who would go on to really, really become ecosystem developers. So Mr. Suresh Prabhu had in fact launched the HERA program at one of our graduation programs in Delhi at the United Nations House. You would see that little image on the right. And I understand Mr. Suresh Prabhu also happens to be a chartered accountant. So he, at that time, he did mention that this could be very useful for CAs getting involved as business uh, development service providers and not just for compliance work. So when you're serving your clients, you would also look at the business development aspects of what it is that you do, rather than just looking at the compliance and the governance required. So very quickly, we mentioned this. Yes, so assistance to entrepreneurs comes in many forms. I mentioned to you the entrepreneurial ecosystem development a little earlier. So the Empretech centers are really one-stop centers for enterprise creation uh, and for improving competitiveness of entrepreneurs. Right now, we're working with the big four consulting enterprises, consulting organizations that are helping us with the preparation of business plans and obtaining finance for business ventures and setting up mutually beneficial connections with larger national and foreign companies. This is something that's being done by large consulting houses, but there is always a possibility for chartered accountants to come in, become part of the program, and also add their services to the mix. So this is a direct way of CAs to actually get involved in the program. So typical programs look like this. So I'll give you two examples, non-India example. Of course, in India, we are also doing this, but let me look at Brazil. So for example, these are SME support institutions in Brazil that have come together. There was a bank that was involved, and these are the targeted sectors. Okay. And so the transnationals got involved. There were 50 SMEs that got involved, and some seven transnationals, etc. And 50 from a certain place, and then 48 from another place. These are all specific to Brazil. And then the impact was 100% increase recorded amongst participating SMEs in strategic areas. 5% increase in employment and sales. Sales doubled in 9 months. So doubling of sales, it's a fairly strong impetus. So what usually happens is the transnationals come in and use the Empretech centers to prepay contracts sometimes. Okay, so contracts are offered, prepaid contracts are offered. We once worked with IKEA and with BMW in the Ludhiana cluster of IKEA in Bangalore and and BMW in Ludhiana cluster, where you have sewing parts and cycles. So BMW was basically looking for a few entrepreneurs amongst, let's say, 5,000 entrepreneurs. So they were looking at very few that they could work with, which would get involved in the value chain. So value chain development is something that we do. And we help select these entrepreneurs. And I've chartered accountants can help position and promote their entrepreneurs into the system. They could get involved in these country programs. I can tell you more about this on a one-on-one in the event any of you would be interested. So I was mentioning to you Ernst and Young, who happens to be a knowledge partner, and then the UN agencies, UNCTAD, UNIDO, and UN Women. And so the HERA program involves governments. We work with several state governments and also the national ministries. The Ministry of MSME of the Government of India, the Development Commissioner's Office, requested this program in India. So it's run by it's basically a program that's hosted by the Ministry of MSME. Although the Ministry of Commerce and Industries also wants HERAs to be developed across the country. And I'll just share with you a very quick note uh, on on the latest. So this was uh, just as COVID had struck. Unfortunately, we're looking at 480 HERAs in the country. So under Empretech India Foundation. And the idea would be to work with these HERAs for developing export potential of various state governments. Okay. So the letter that was written from the center, from the Ministry of from the Ministry of Commerce and Industries to various state governments, was to say that the state academic institutions, research institutions, and the entire industrial ecosystem could be used to identify and train these high impact entrepreneurs. And the state governments would also have freedom in customizing the program. So we're now at this point we're customizing the program. In Nagaland, the program is different from the way it is in Manipur, or it's different from how it is in Orissa. In West Bengal, we worked with the government of West Bengal recently and set up a full development cycle, which was entirely customized as per West Bengal's requirement. So, if any of you would like to get involved, you could get in touch, and we could have discussions around how we could take this program further. As of now, we are reaching out to Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh. So these are the states that have been formally approached, but there are other states that have expressed interest in this. So, how does the program work? Uh, what is competency development? What do we mean by competency development? So, let's understand. The first thing to do when we're developing competencies of entrepreneurs is basically looking at making some insights available to entrepreneurs with growth mindsets. So when I say this, this is not for all entrepreneurs. In fact, you would see that many entrepreneurs are like jobbers. They would take on a work and they would just do it. They're not really looking at innovation in their businesses. They're not looking at developing their businesses to cater to something that they may not have a demand for immediately, but perhaps in the next 5 years or 7 years. They're not really visionaries in that they can predict where their industries are moving. So they may not be able to understand what's happening to the industries. There are examples in Tirupur, for example, the textile industry was swamped by low-cost Chinese import in textiles. And so lots of entrepreneurs lost their businesses. But there are few entrepreneurs that moved to other businesses, and there are few entrepreneurs that actually um, sort of uh, did something which was innovative, which kept them ahead of in the learning curve. So that's competency development for you. Okay, so that's about mindset development. That's about habit formation, better decision making through a range of coaching inputs from the program that can happen. So we refer to this as the personal entrepreneurial competency framework. So there is a framework, and we cover the entrepreneurial competency framework. And who is it responsible? Who does it most relate to? Aspiring entrepreneurs, as I mentioned earlier, people who wish to go on to become entrepreneurs, also early stage entrepreneurs, startups, and settled entrepreneurs, MSMEs, and larger companies as well, and stakeholders. It could even we've worked with government officials, we worked with bankers, we've worked with managers in large corporations. So people with growth mindsets, people who may want to philosophize and understand how is it that they could decide better. I mentioned to you this program is about decision making. It's about improving quality of decision making. So this cultural piece is the first piece that is offered. Now, based on this cultural piece, we move into the linkages aspect of the program. I'm going to share with you a short video if you're still not bored enough by what I'm saying. I'm just going to put this little video out, which will tell you what we're doing in a very, very remote village called Chuchiyamlang in Nagaland. First designing the cultural piece and then moving on to linkages, which is essentially an access to markets, technology, finance, etc., helping business plans. So I'm just going to put that video out. Tell me what you think.
오늘 난로를 가리사 응을 마바방으로 맞추지 가장으로 가면서 유물림 상을 마차기 순수 상을 마차기 이번 보시기도 도모모모가 아주 오당 이바 농의 주엔 아스바 농의 디임랑고 아스르리 달리바다 아주 오다 이바 농의 도모스릴 다니 유블랑다 We're seeing the culmination of about 15 years of effort of the Protect program in India in the setting up of the Yakaki Hira development project in Chuchiamlang village. Now, this has been thanks entirely to the village council chief's active involvement in the behavioral process that Protect Hira program has introduced.
We can see a unique proposition of public-private partnership, which can create a real sense of prosperity in this village. And I'm very happy to be part of this moment and very happy to be part of this team.
What the chief has done is he's subscribed to the program, he's practicing the behaviors on an ongoing basis, and he's spreading the good work that he's being able to attract to himself as a result of the practice.
Okay, so that's a little about the one of the installations of the Hira process, where we are offering the enterprise development services and the cultural context. We've been working in Nagaland for quite some time now, and uh, there's a definite offtake that is going to happen over the next years in this village and perhaps in other villages. So what we do is we identify entrepreneurs. This is how this really is about competencies, finalizing, arranging workshops and coaching sessions, and then we move to the enterprise development services. Of course, all the people we start with do not stay till the end of the program, as with all good things in life. There is obviously a filtering that happens. So about 250 in our experience would release about 10 HIRAs, high impact entrepreneurs. We're starting with 250 and come down to 10. So now, these are the three clusters of behaviors that we work with. We refer to them, as I mentioned earlier, as 10 entrepreneurial competencies, or the PECs, personal entrepreneurial competencies. So let me see if I can share this with you in some detail. Just give me a second. Okay, so here's the competency sheet. Okay, I'm going to put this out on the screen so you can see it. You will see that there are three sets or systems of behaviors. There's planning, there's achievement, and there's power. Now, what happens when you? Okay, let me just quickly let me explain this first, and then we'll get down to the specifics. So, imagine that you're setting up a house. Okay, so when you're designing a house, what's the first thing that you do? You set up the foundation. So the foundational behaviors are around information seeking. So you need a curious person or person enhanced levels of curiosity to be able to attract information to him or herself with respect to what needs to be done, what kind of a business needs to be set up, what needs to be done in very, very specific terms to be able to um, uh, gather the resources needed for setting up the business. What should be the scale of the business? Who should be the customers? How should I be working, engaging with them? Uh, what would be the nature of the service provided? All of these are related to the competence or competency of information seeking. And you also see this in the context of entrepreneurship, that there's a difference between the information seeking competence of a first gen entrepreneur, an early stage entrepreneur, vis-a-vis an MSME, a slightly larger and set company, maybe one or two generations in business already. And if you closely, you'd see that the first gen entrepreneur is perhaps a lot more uh, holistic in his or her approach with respect to information seeking, whereas a second gen entrepreneur is perhaps a little more set in his ways because he's very very focused. He or she is focused with respect to a certain industry or a certain business expertise that would play a role in determining business and outcome. So these are things that we work with. We understand. We try and understand if that, for example, if I'm a little weak on information seeking, that this is a practice that can be developed, that can be enriched with so that ultimately I would get a larger and a more relevant set of information to start with as I start my business or expand. So that's information seeking, a formative planning set of behaviors or competencies. Then, on top of information setting or information seeking, is a very important competence which we refer to as goal setting. Now, goal setting can be two kinds. They could be finite goals or they could be infinite goals. Goals that do not come to an end. I could have endless goals. For example, I could keep working on my competency building. I could keep working on my my persistence. For example, I could keep working on commitment. I could work on some of my some of the chose competencies. Now, now, that would be a very, very good way to design what we refer to as an atelic goal. An atelic goal, Greek for bindedness or boundedness or finiteness, uh, is telos, telos. So from telos comes telic. Okay, so anything that is bounded or finite is telic. Anything that is unbounded or infinite is atelic, right? So just add an A before you prefix telic with A, you get atelic. So an atelic goal or an atelic objective. So am I still in the webinar? Something happened, I think. Tech support, are you still around? Uh, Not sure. Am I still in the webinar, please? Okay. Okay, something happened. Something happened, so I wasn't sure. All right, so I was just mentioning. So the atelic goal would, yes, thank you, Devang. It'd be great if I could keep seeing you. It gives me some reassurance because I don't see the others. Is it all right? Okay, thank you. So an atelic goal would be a goal that is uh, unbounded. And so when I'm looking on working on behaviors, developing something that doesn't come to a termination, doesn't come to an end, that will be working on an atelic goal. A telling goal is I need to get from point A to point B in such and such time. So that's fine. You can have a combination of telic and atelic goals. It's important that we understand that atelic goals lead to real prosperity at a personal level and also at societal levels and higher levels at the level of nations, for example. So that's goal setting. Then you have a competence, which is around systematic planning and monitoring. Now, it's good that I've set a goal, but how do I get there? It's like asking the question, how do you eat an elephant? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So you set a goal, and what you do is you break it down into parts. And there are some entrepreneurs who are very good at this, and there are some entrepreneurs who are not very good at this. And so those entrepreneurs who are very good at breaking goals into very, very specific tasks and then further subtasks with clear time frames are entrepreneurs that do really well in life. Okay, so that's the SPM as we refer to it, systematic planning and monitoring competence. I've I've set it up here for you to see. We spoke of ISK, information seeking, GST. It's not goods and services tax. It's goal setting, right? It's an acronym for goal setting that we use. And SPM is systematic planning and monitoring. So all three are part of the cluster of planning. Refer to it as part of the planning cluster. Then comes your achievement cluster. This is the part of the house that you can see from a distance. The planning cluster you can't see because planning happens under the ground. So competence development is about developing certain behaviors, certain habits that help in decision making. But it's very quiet and it's not visible. It all happens under the ground. And then comes the stuff that you can see very clearly. What can you see? Yes, Devang?
Sir, just give me 2 minutes. I will return back. I just
Sure,
have,
sure. No
just give me.
problem.
You just
No problem.
continue. No problem.
I'll continue. I'll continue. All right. So when we're talking about the competencies that are visible above the ground, you have the first thing that you see is DEQ. DEQ is demand for efficiency and quality. A demand for efficiency and quality. Okay, so when you step into a factory, the first thing that you see is the cleanliness of the shop floor. That's the first thing that you see. Or how clean the environment is. If there's dust, if there's the bad smell, bad odor, or if it's really hot or humid or things like that. Those are the first thing that you really experience when you get into enterprise. You try and experience your sense organs would tell you how uh, important efficiency and quality is for the founder or for the founders of the enterprise. And the thing about these competencies is the way you see behaviors, the way you see someone behave in the sitting room or in the drawing room is the way you'll see him behave in the boardroom. Okay? Behaviors are fungible. Behaviors are easily transferable. So if the founder is not paying attention to certain things that are happening in the uh, let's say in the staff toilet, okay, then chances are the founder is not paying attention to uh, how quality is being maintained on the shop floor. So it's easily transferable, these behaviors. You're paying attention, you pay attention. Right? Okay, so that's DEQ for you. And at the heart of DEQ is this whole idea of innovation. Innovation, entrepreneurs want to do things better, faster, and cheaper. Right? That's what we want to do. We want to do things better, faster, and cheaper. The trouble with better, faster, and cheaper is that when you look at two of these items, the third goes for a toss. You fix better and faster, it is not usually cheaper. Or faster and cheaper is not usually better, and so on and so forth. So the idea is to move all three uh, to the next level. You want to get things better, faster, and cheaper. And the way you do this is by innovating. So you look at ways in which you can uh, uh, introduce certain practices, certain routines, certain relationships, perhaps even developing your purpose in a way that makes your enterprise innovative and bring in a culture of innovation. IBM once uh, had had the slogan that it used almost everywhere as a catchphrase. It just said "think," and "think" is something that you see also on Lenovo today. I think laptops and computers. So what IBM would do is it would bring in some interns, uh, people fresh out of colleges, and get them to work with senior managers and ask them to and encourage them to change the way they're working. Hmm? Now this is interesting. It's like bringing in um, a fresh set of ideas and perspectives into the work style of uh, managers who've been around for a while. So it's extremely important to do that in enterprises from time to time. So that's how you get demand, efficiency, and quality. You set a benchmark and you start raising the bar. Then there is a competence we refer to as persistence. Now, persistence, we all understand what persistence is. But I'm give you a couple of slightly uncommon perspectives on persistence. Okay, we usually understand persistence as keeping on trying to go through a certain barrier, a barrier that may be set up by an obstacle or a challenge. So that could be. So what we how we also look at persistence is being able to find another way, not necessarily to go through, but go around. That also is persistence. Okay, so persistence is not just about hitting your head on a brick till either the wall or your head gives, but it's also about finding a door which is a few meters to the left and to use it when you can use it and not necessarily having to go to the wall. And so what kind of material is the wall made of? Metaphorically speaking, it could be a challenge or it could be an obstacle. And what's the difference between a challenge and an obstacle? We distinguish between the two. We think of challenges as internal. Okay, we look at obstacles as external. We say that I'm faced with a challenge when when I have trouble in accepting something that something can be done. For example, if I wish to climb Mount Everest, for example, at this age of close to 50, I would say that it's not possible. I don't think I can do it. Very few people at the age of 50 have climbed the Everest and survived because it's not just about climbing; it's also about coming down safe. So very few people have done that. I don't think I have it. I don't think I can take the training. So that's a challenge. And the obstacle is what lies on my path. Getting the monies required or getting the right Sherpa that would accompany me or who would accompany me, getting the training required, etc. Those are obstacles, and there's a difference between obstacles and challenges. But both of these are downwinds. These are basically preventing me from moving from A to B, and so persistence needed to break through obstacles and challenges. Now, persistence is different from commitment. That's another competence. Commitment. How is commitment different from persistence? And what is commitment? I find commitment is about staying true to an understanding that you would fulfill the needs of three sets of people. The first would be your team and your own people who are part of you in your enterprise. And the second could be customers that you would want to work with, the customers that you would want to uh, look at the long-term goodwill for instead of short-term gains. So if you're committed to a client, what you would do is you would ensure that uh, you're thinking about long-term goodwill and you're not just cutting corners and just getting that one sale. And so that's commitment to the client. And then, of course, you have commitment to service providers and people who really They're not part of your team, but people who your bankers, let's say your uh, providers, people who you contract with for your work. So you demonstrate commitment to people and you demonstrate persistence to processes. So commitment to people, persistence to process. Inanimate, animate, right? Now, CRT is something I'd like to talk about, calculated risk taking. This is something that your community knows very well. Chartered accountants understand what is and they help break it down in very simple language to their clients. So you're doing very well there. But it's also not just about statistics. It's not just about figuring out what can go wrong in my business, but it is about also being able to understand the difference between uncertainty and risk. Many entrepreneurs are unable to do this. They find themselves very, very hard pressed to understand, this is manageable, but when it's actually not. And they would think that something is not manageable when it actually is. For example, taking out a small insurance on a trade, or small insurance on a, uh, I was surprised. Entrepreneurs don't even know that there's something called a key man insurance, for example, which protects the interest of the enterprise if it were to happen to the founders, because the enterprise is heavily dependent on the founder in the initial stages. Of course, later stages as well, but especially stages. So many startups and MSMEs are not quite aware of the problems of risk taking. So, three parts to risk taking. First is assessing risk, really understanding what are the risks that stand in your way, or the probability of something happening, figuring out. Okay, so that's the first. And second would be to mitigate those risks. Once I've understood it, I try and mitigate those risks, right? So there are steps that I take to mitigate, to lessen risk. And the third would be to take the risk. Now, I remember this when I was a private banker in Geneva, working with a bank, and we would work on portfolios of some of our clients. We'd work on designing, portfolios out of various asset classes. And so a very popular portfolio theory that we used was the Markowitz portfolio theory and system, which allowed you to blend various asset classes to give a certain kind of a return risk for an asset, for a complex asset. So that's something that we did. But also know this, that when Harry Markowitz was asked by one of his students after he got a Nobel Prize for his portfolio theory, so how do you manage your stocks and how do you manage your asset class? How do you manage your portfolio? And he said, for me, it's 50%, 50% bonds. So while he understands risks, he's set up a mechanism to reduce and mitigate risks. He perhaps doesn't take risks, and that's critical, okay, to entrepreneurship. Then comes OSI, opportunity seeking and initiative. Very quickly, opportunity seeking really is about not just taking the ball to the goalpost, but kicking it in. It's very important that I'm able to uh, get that contract in place. It's really important because without the contract, there is no money in the bank. And without no money in the bank, I'm not sustainable. So it's important to be able to offer seva, work with your clients, help them in achieving their dreams and aspirations. But it's very important to also ensure that you get paid for your services. It's very important. So OSI is about getting the contracts in, ensuring that you de-risk the uh, chances of your, of a failure in a with respect to a contractual obligation. Okay, so OSI, taking initiative, is also part of OSI. Are you the first to move out? Are you seizing an opportunity when it comes to you? For example, this Empretech opportunity, many of you would possibly, have not known about Empretech, but it is now an opportunity that's coming to you. How many of you would say yes, write an expression of interest, and I'm going to try and get involved? So that's initiative. Okay, so if you have that competence, if you have that muscle, you're demonstrating competence, the competence of initiative taking. So that's OSI. Then comes two competencies right on top. On top would also mean that you have to use them sparingly. These are higher competencies. And so these cannot be used ahead of these competencies. So the ones lower down need to be used earlier. And then as you start moving up, you use these at the, sparingly, only when needed. One of these is PAN. PAN stands for persuasion and networking. Okay. So persuasion and network. I'm sure you have study circles and you have network gardens that you go to. I understand there is an election that's taking place in a few months. Several of you are applying for posts and positions. So it is a PAN behavior that you're demonstrating. So if you're applying for certain positions so that you can do some work for society at a larger level, present some of your cases, your, let's say, agenda uh, for adding value to society. So that's PAN, persuasion and networking. And these are two sides of the same coin. You persuade and you have a network. So you use the network that you have for persuasion. And then on top comes IAS. So just before IAS, persuasion also a very important aspect of persuasion is communication. And communication is something that I've found many professionals not very, not taking to it very seriously. But I can tell you, communication is extremely important. Professionals who are very good, with the skills, if they're able to communicate, if they're able to articulate the thoughts better, they're able to do some critical thinking and present their thoughts better, then chances are they'll be able to get a lot more for the effort that they put in. And the Greeks, for example, looked at communication, broke it up into three parts. They said there is ethos, there is pathos, and there is logos. So apply it to this discussion we're having now. Ethos. Ethos is about credibility. For example, I won't be able to talk to you about any technical aspect of chartered accountancy because I'm not an accountant myself. So I don't have that ethos to be able to talk to you about accounting matters or standards in accounting. Although we work with the ICAR, ISAR rather, International Standards for Accounting Reporting. So we have a standing committee, there's an UNCTAD standing committee with ISAR for sustainable reporting, etc. I know that that exists. I know the terms of reference, but I may not be able to tell you more than you know already, being part of the community and having learned accounting from inside out. So ethos uh, is that aspect of communication that allows you to present with conviction something because you come from that place. Okay, so that's ethos. Then there is pathos, which is the feeling that you put in, the amount of, let's say, emotion that goes into a communication. How much do you feel for what it is that you say? Okay. So if there is emotion that you carry, and emotion is very, very important in carrying thoughts and feelings. So emotion, the aspect of emotion is what is referred to as pathos in communication. Then there is the third aspect of communication, pan, which is referred to as logos. So the Greeks looked at logos as something beyond wisdom. It's not just about knowledge and wisdom, it's beyond wisdom. It's about intelligence. Okay. So the content, the quality of the content that you're putting forward. Uh, for example, right now we're discussing competencies for entrepreneurial success or business success. Okay. So the logos is actually this. This is the wisdom or the knowledge that you're accessing. Rest of everything that I've said marks ethos, perhaps a little bit of pathos as well, because I happen to be a social entrepreneur myself. So I feel very, very much for the subject. Okay, so that's communication and persuasion and networking. Then comes this behavior on top, or the competence on top with a set of behaviors. IAS, not the IS officers, although they do have this, but IAS really refers to independence and self confidence. Independence and self confidence. Okay. So independence is nothing but independence. My independence comes from the self assuredness that I depend on several individuals or several businesses to be able to provide to me what I need. And only then will I really be independent. So, therefore, independence and interdependence are pretty much the same, one and the same thing. So, that's a competence. How do I develop my independence? How do I become self assured of my ability to deliver? Okay, so that's independence. Uh, Self-confidence and self-esteem are related, and these are extremely important. You'd see lots of entrepreneurs who are very, very good at what they do, very high DEQ, okay, very high demand for efficiency and quality, but very low IAS. So they would be able to do it for you. They also have the commitment. They may also have the risk-taking abilities. Unfortunately, uh, they don't have the confidence to be able to present themselves in the marketplace. Now, I'm just going to sum up. Uh, am I still there? Yes? Okay. So, I'm just going to quickly sum up, Devang, the competency framework. It's in three clusters of behaviors. There is a planning cluster, there is an achievement cluster, and there is a power cluster. And I'm going to share this with you, Devang. You can later send it to people who may be interested in the United Nations on this. You can see it on the screen here.
Yes.
Okay, so power, achievement, and planning.
Got
Okay,
it.
so these are the three systems of behaviors. If you practice these behaviors on an ongoing basis as professionals, as chartered accountants, chances are you will do very, very well in your practice. Okay, chances are you'll do extremely well in your practice. And more importantly, if you were to present this to your clients, okay, if you to make this available to SMEs and startups that you are servicing already, then chances are they will certainly benefit from this. Benefit because these are very there's a ton of research. There's a lot of research that's gone into this. In fact, the system of Empretex behaviors have come out of Harvard University's. There's a professor there called David McClelland who has researched his entire life on these competencies. He's come up with a book. You may read this book. It's called The Achieving Society. And he basically, in that book, what he says is that there are certain societies that are very high achievers. Okay, like in Europe, Germany, for example, is a very high achieving society. But uh, Poland, for example, the Eastern European economies are not very high achieving economies. And what he did was understand this. He did research across 70 countries, 70. And he found that people from high achieving societies were people who are demonstrating these behaviors. They're people who demonstrate these behaviors naturally. And so people from countries or enterprises or regions that are struggling, are usually people who are not, usually people who do not demonstrate these behaviors. I'm going to pause here, Devang, and I'll be happy to take questions or any input, anything at all that you might have. Devang, would you have any questions or any observations, anything at all? It's 3 o'clock.
Yeah, we having some questions. I will sharing with you.
Sure. You can send me the questions and I'm going to see if I can do justice to them.
Yeah, so these are the questions.
What are 5 core competencies that are necessary for entrepreneurial success? 5 core competencies? There are actually 3 core competencies, the core ones. There's planning, there is achievement, and there is power. So planning is foundational. Achievement is what you see on top, and flag on top of the building that you set up is called the power flag. It's very interesting. Once we had this discussion with a very senior government official in Punjab, and he was asking how are the entrepreneurs in Punjab different from entrepreneurs in Tamil Nadu. So I said, well, I won't be able to tell you in very specific terms, but I can tell you that having worked with entrepreneurs in the country, the power competencies or the set of competencies of entrepreneurs from the northern part of the country actually higher planning and achievement. So you'd possibly have a very, very wealthy entrepreneur from southern part of India, for example, who will come in a Maruti 800 or a Maruti, Swift Zen, small car. He doesn't really care too much about riding a Rolls Royce, right? Or a big car, right? So power competence and the planning competence are different competencies. Achievement is a different set of competencies. These are distinct competencies. I did put these out in my little presentation. What's the second question here? Okay, now how does MSMEs help? Oh, very, very good question. Very good question. Can MSMEs help startups? Certainly they can. And how? By prepaying contracts with them. In one sentence, there's one way that entrepreneurs can be brought in. So, in fact, it's not just about startups, it's even before you start up. So, what MSMEs can do, and many HERA MSMEs are actually doing this in our scheme of things, is they're looking to bring in internships. Okay, so you start with a 5 6 month internship, you work on these behaviors, and you're getting primed with respect to these behaviors, and you start demonstrating these behaviors, and then slowly because I mentioned to you, entrepreneurship is a practice in our scheme of things. Okay, just as chartered accountancy is a practice, entrepreneurship was is a practice, and that practice involves internship. It has. Okay, so you need to start with internship. And then once the internship happens, then you can get apprenticeship, where a small project can be given, and you could be given in charge of, you could be using the resources of the MSME. So the MSME can support some apprenticeships. Okay, so that's the second stage. And the apprenticeships are, let's say, a fixed project where you get an opportunity to get in the value chain of the entrepreneur and develop some product or develop some service. Okay, so that's the second. And the third, once all this happens, once internship and the apprenticeship takes place properly, and the MSME is confident that the startup can add value to the enterprise, that the MSME can even give a contract and a prepaid contract, be very good. Because usually the startup doesn't have access to bank money, does not have access to funds as easily as an MSME has. So the MSME can stand guarantor for the entrepreneur and could also potentially offer a prepaid contract from its reserves. Uh, Here, take a contract, give me a development cycle, let me see, process all of this. They can incubate by giving some space for them to, for example. So that could be another opportunity. We have this happening in our scheme of things as well. What are the obstacles to the growth of MSMEs? What are obstacles? It's a good thing that you said obstacles, not challenges, because I mentioned to you most of the problems of MSMEs come from challenges. They don't come from obstacles. Okay, challenges. You remember I mentioned to you, challenges are internal, obstacles are external. Okay, so if I've been able to surmount my challenges and I'm looking at obstacles that are outside, I'm looking at things like, let's say, financing mechanisms not available. Okay, my appropriate financial mechanism is not available. So that would be a typical obstacle. But what I would do is I would take that as a challenge. I would convert an obstacle into a challenge. I would look at what is it, or how is it that I can internalize this? Okay. So, for example, if I'm not getting money from a bank, okay, I'm this because I've just started my business. I have a track record. And so the bank does not recognize an entrepreneur without a track record. Or maybe the bank is asking for some collateral, which I don't have. So that's an obstacle. How do I convert it into a challenge? what I do is I go to my MSME sponsor or someone who's higher up on the value chain. Say, sir, madam, would you please prepay a contract for me? I'm willing to do so. You don't have to take very big risk on me. Give me a small contract, but prepay it so that I can at least get into the business. The best form of money that I've seen in the last 15 years that I've been associated with this program, and for many years that also, the best is not the money that comes from a bank. The best money is not the money that comes from a passive investor, someone who's just put money into a business. The best form of money is customers' money. Okay, so if you can find customers' money, you will definitely be successful. So that's how you convert obstacles into challenges and get yourself in situations where you can address this. Which MSME is what kind of MSMEs are most profitable? I don't know. I mean, any kind of MSMEs could be profitable. There could be service-led MSMEs. There could be manufacturing MSMEs. Profit is a very relative term. To some people, even 60% ROI is not profitable enough. To some people, 3%, 5% is profitable. So it depends on how you define profit. Okay, so in many cases, we entrepreneurs looking at socio-economic impact. If they can't create socio-economic impact, they don't see themselves as profitable. If they're not addressing SDGs, they don't see themselves as profitable. So people, planet, and profit are related. And so you're creating wealth. As an entrepreneur, that's your responsibility to create wealth, not just for yourself, but also for society and for the environment. That you're doing things in a way so that the environment is not harmed. So, so yes, profit is a fairly big term. Now, let's look at another question. How can small NGOs, what can small NGOs, sorry, what can NGOs, how can NGOs and CSOs learn from this? So how would CSOs, civil society organizations get involved in this process of development? In our scheme of things, I think it's extremely important that NGOs and CSOs participate in economic development, okay, in the SDGs of the UN. And SDG specifically is about economic development. And it's about economic development of nations using entrepreneurship and using ways in which entrepreneurs actually level up and scale up in the scheme of things. So what we're looking to do here is to get civil society organizations to play a role in selecting entrepreneurs. Number one, getting involved in selection. And this selection can happen from schools, not necessarily even from colleges. Looking at ways in promoting entrepreneurship in society, taking out negative biases against entrepreneurship. If you divide the country into two parts, East and West, you'll see that in the eastern part of the country, there's this societal uh, there's a societal let's call it a bias against a young person taking to entrepreneurship as career, right? So there could be uh, a very positive societal bias in the western part of the country for the same, with respect to entrepreneurship. So civil society organizations can try and play a role in promoting entrepreneurship as a career. When I was in school, no one told me, none of my teachers told me that you could go on to become an entrepreneur. They said you can become a doctor, be an engineer, uh, you know, uh, an IAS officer, or a failure. These are options that were available. So this is, we're laughing about it now, but this is a mindset that we need to move out of. If I look back at some of my fellow batchmates from school who were backbenchers in school, those who would be at the towards the not sitting in the front, not wanting to come out first in class, etc. Chances are some of those guys are today offering employment to lots of people. I know of a particular boy, a friend of mine, who now employs over 1,000 people. So, so we're looking at behaviors, not skills, when it comes to entrepreneurship as a major determinant of success. Okay, so when we talk about entrepreneurial success, the attention to be paid to is competencies, which includes skills but is not limited to skills. So you need skills and behaviors, and this is something that you might want to think about. Uh, the higher you become skilled, what are the chances that you go on to become an entrepreneur? In fact, if you look at it like this, you've acquired a degree, now you've got another degree, let's say PhD, now you've got a double PhD, a D.Lit, or whatever. You're getting all these degrees. So, what are the chances that you will go on to risk your reputation on entrepreneurship? Because remember, when you become an entrepreneur, you're risking something. You're risking uh, you're risking your ethos. You're putting yourself out in the marketplace, and people can run over you, can walk over, they can reject your products and services, and you can actually fail, right? So chances are, if you're acquiring degrees and if you're doing really well there, the chances are you would not want to go on to become an entrepreneur. This is something that we need to address in society. This is where civil society organizations play a role. Devang, do you have any other questions or
Yeah, we having a questions. So I think we can continue for 15 minutes more. Then I can share some more question with you.
sure, sure. Please send me some more if you could.
So right now I will share with you or after 15 minutes.
You want me to continue for another 15
Yeah,
minutes?
yeah.
So
So
I'll take
around
yes,
3:30 I will share the next few questions
the
with
next set. All right. All right. So let me get back to my presentation. In fact, what I'll do is let me share with you yet another video on the practice. Okay, because when I'm keeping on saying that entrepreneurship is a practice, and we looked at the competencies framework. Now I'm just going to now take you to a video that talks about the practice. Let me share that with you. Just give me a second.
volume is yeah,
Introduced
it's not audible.
I was under the impression
Now
that
it's yeah.
I will be meeting many successful entrepreneurs. But in due course of time, when I try to see myself by practicing the uh, competencies, in that process, I realized that I was finding a competent entrepreneur within myself. The entrepreneurial behaviors that the Protect program promotes. It's a set of specifically laid out. It's a framework, and then now the practice is to use this framework to constantly analyze our own decision making, and that constant examination gradually enhances our entire decision making process. While practicing the entrepreneurial competencies, it helped me to make better and competent decisions in my personal level and also even in the council activities. Empretech is one of the very few programs that the UN General Assembly endorses for mindset development. And with constant practice, we allow ourselves to accommodate different worldviews. And this in turn helps us avoid conflict while working with each other. We understand that the affiliate program has two aspects.
the culture part and the languages part. And we also understand that both the aspects, the culture part and the languages part, are equally important.
We're constantly working towards the improvement of our decision making that gradually generates positive outcomes and brings up about favorable scenarios in our professional and personal settings.
The Yakutsk Hero projects are being designed not only for the current generation, but for the generations to come.
I'm from Chijula. Currently, I live in work environment. I'm absolutely trying to see positive impact gradually manifest in the place I come from. Adding my experience in waste management, all of this becomes possible. The constant involvement in the community partnerships and protect network. I'm excited to go home for the upcoming international embroidery training workshop. To me, this is more than just a trip. It is a chance to take home international best practices, ignite change, and drive development in our community.
Right? So that was yet another instance of the practice. So what we do is there is a gym where we practice these competencies on an ongoing basis. I just gave you a broad framework, but when you get into details, each of these competencies is broken into three behaviors. So you basically have a system of 30 behaviors. There are these 30 behaviors that we work on an ongoing, and it's difficult. It is actually very difficult, but sometimes it becomes a little, uh, some people find it a little, um, let's say, they're a little shy to open up. So we work on this because I would be very comfortable writing something of my thoughts, feelings, and emotions in my diary, in my personal diary, but to be equally comfortable sharing it with people outside. So what we've done is we've kept a small user group of people who are practitioners, and the practitioners, we don't have observers in the room. It's only practitioners. So it's practitioners that see each other and put down their entrepreneurial behaviors in that space, and respond and critically analyze these behaviors as we put them there. So that's something that we do on an ongoing basis. We also take you very quickly. We were on this presentation. So what happens when you really work on behaviors? These are some of the takeaways. Most people have said that they've been helped with respect to business confidence, their decision making ability, competitiveness, opportunity seeking. These are the top four. Also, collaboration and networking is the fifth. Okay, these are the top 5 ways they've been helped by the program. What we do is we work on something called a profile, called a seva. Now, when you look to the right, this entrepreneur, Manish Kothari, he's a second generation entrepreneur from Anand in Gujarat. He's a manufacturer. He's a capital goods manufacturer. So we've been working with him on the business planning, and etc. But more than that, we've been monitoring his behaviors on an ongoing basis since he joined the program in 2018. So for the last years, we've been monitoring his behaviors, and the way he's behaved is the way, sort of, you see this behavior set falling down in this little column on the right, from the most dominant behaviors to the weakest behaviors. So when you know which are the behaviors that you're very weak at, what you could do is you could start strengthening them. You could start working on them consciously. We call that a mirror. So as I said, that's a cultural input. Now, following the culture, you have the linkages piece, where you're doing a new business scoping, your value chain analysis, there's on-site handholding, and this is usually by HIRA chartered accountants. Okay, so we have HIRA CAs that get involved in this work. So the and then you have business plan development support, monitoring and advisory, etc. So all of this work is something that is being done by by senior professionals. At this point, of course, by the big four consulting enterprises, but we're also looking at individuals that are now getting in and looking to do this work. Individual accountants, chartered accountants. Okay, so value chain development. Now, this is a system we are developing in Nagaland. Reuse is recycling, then pulp, paper, and fiber, food, arts, and wellness. These are five verticals that we are developing as part of the linkages efforts in Nagaland. And for each of these, there will be PPPs that are being set up, public-private partnerships. And in each of these public-private partnerships, you will have some shareholders who would come in, not just the village council. The village council is going to take 51% of each of these enterprises. So imagine a PPP, a complex. The village council takes about 51% of that complex. The 49% is going to be taken up by Hiras from the other parts of the country, including potentially some of you in the event you're interested. So once it happens, we will all look at lifting the quality of and of course the quantum of business that goes through these complexes, because you have both the buy side and the sell side represented in the same complex. And each of these complexes would be getting some subsidies from the government. There are grants and subsidies to the extent of 80%, sometimes even 90% that are available from the government. So it becomes a lot interesting, quite interesting for chartered accountants and for other professionals to get involved and advise these complexes. Okay. And since we've got another few minutes, I take you through RIFE program. This is development by repurposing Indian, actually indigenous, you could replace Indian with indigenous villages as enterprises. So what we're doing is we're going to the villages, we're setting up these complex partnerships, which I mentioned to you, which is a coming together of the village councils and Hiras from outside. The village councils would be the majority promoters and beneficiaries. The youth entrepreneurs could come in from, let's say, from educational institutions and become part of this. Pensioners are also coming in. There are quite a few pensioners in the HIRA system today who are coming in and becoming entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, by taking up small stakes in these businesses. And Emprotech India Foundation is something like a binding agent. It's bringing in all of these elements together, both the culture and the linkages program. Right now, for example, I did mention to you that I'll give you a few specific examples. So we're working on a project in Zambia. For example, Zambia has severe energy shortage. So we are taking NTPC from India, National Thermal Power Corporation, for renewable sources of power, etc. And the Ministry of External Affairs is funding this program. And so we've identified a couple of villages, four villages, out of which we'll identify two, where this project will be set up. So the project will be part owned by the village council and part owned by Hiras from India and Zambia. As I said, we have Hiras now in Africa and in other parts of the world. So we're looking at developing also a similar project in Australia and other countries in the Hiras. And some of these Hiras happen to be professionals, some of these happen to be entrepreneurs, some of them happen to be aspiring entrepreneurs, early stage entrepreneurs as well. Okay, so I'll just continue with that presentation. So yes, the benefit to this is that, of course, you have development at local level. You have local level entrepreneurs who are being developed. Unemployed villagers can be engaged. Okay, local challenges can be taken care of. We're working with CSIR, for example, uh, Center for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR. They have 19 laboratories across the country, and we're working on waste management uh, solutions. Young students can do some social work through what it's fellowships. In fact, we would be very happy to work with ICAI at some point and set up some fellowship programs uh, so that some of your early stage chartered accountants can come to these village projects understand how to structure and develop these projects, develop some kind of a business models, etc., business plans, and then some credit offtake could take place by the local banks. We work, for example, in Nagaland, we work with the Nagaland Rural Bank, which is a coming together of State Bank of India, the state government, and the central government. So it's a joint venture between State Bank of India and a few other. So we could potentially also bring in CSR. Empretech India is a CSR recognized entity. So we raise CSR funding and we can potentially do this also. So some chartered accountants could potentially get involved in the DRIVE program and help in developing businesses, enterprises, and offer these enterprises, including preparation of information, memorandum, setting up the business plans, setting up the valuation reports. Some of you could be valuers, certified valuers, so you could help with that as well. Uh, New enterprise creation, of course, this is the work. So we will be talking to DPIIT and we'll be looking at work that we should be doing there. So these are the HERA CAs here. The HERA Enterprise, the HERA EY experts, let's say with one of the big four experts would be here in putting together the plans, and the HERA chartered accountants could come in here and help in designing and developing the these the EDS, the Enterprise Development Service. Okay, so we have a few HERA CAs already, and there could be more coming in who would like to add value to this. Outcomes on the cultural side, of course, you're building a culture of entrepreneurship. On linkages, you're building solid businesses at the village level, at an ecosystem development level. And what are the expectations out of a hero entrepreneur? Business survival, affluence, job creation, enterprise creation, value chain development, ecosystem development, economies of scale, investment for the state, and FDI. So these are some of the aspects. Now, since 2011, when we started the program, since 2011, we've worked with 4,000 entrepreneurs, sensitized 2,500. We've developed about 100 HERA enterprises. Uh, 10,000 direct employment created, about 1 lakh indirect employment created. 1,000 crores have been invested, have been absorbed by the HERA enterprises. We've even helped set up enterprises outside of India. In Africa, for example, there was this one entity where there were 11 centers that we introduced them to. Ultimately, they set up a large steel unit in Ghana. And in Ghana, they're working with the Empretech Center there. We have centers across Africa and Latin America, as I mentioned to you. So the monies could be absorbed through the Empretech. In fact, we represent the World Investment Forum, the UNCTAD World Investment Forum. So if some of your clients are interested, we could put together a system that allows social impact investment to go into these entrepreneurs. There is something in it for governments, for entrepreneurs, for financial institutions, and also for transnationals, and also for business development service providers such as chartered accountants. Okay, so that's something that I thought I'd leave to you. This is a work plan that we can design for your clients and jointly with you, of course, as HERA CAs. As I mentioned to you, that HERA CAs could be playing a very important role in this nation building process. Okay, this can be designed. And so these are the industries that we represent. So this is the footprint, but this is only growing as we're moving along. This entrepreneur was based in China earlier. We've helped him set up shop in Bhubaneswar in India. And so he used to employ about 700 people in China in his shoemaking unit. And now we're helping him set up shop in India. And he's also going to be part of these complexes. You saw him in that little video as well in Chuchiamlang in Nagaland. So he's going to be taking up a small stake in that unit in Nagaland, and he'll be bringing in contracts from Reebok, Nike, and various other shoe companies. His chartered accountant is also very interested in this process. It's possible that they'll end up both becoming shareholders of this Nagaland project. And there could be many other projects that we are looking at. So these are some of these entrepreneurs, high impact entrepreneurs who've been in business for a very long time. All right. So I'm going to stop here. We'll take any questions, any further questions that you might have.
Yeah, so there is some questions. Just give me a minute, I'll share with you.
Do you have any questions, Devang, of your own?
No, no.
Is it going all right? Am I on track, more or less? Am I making sense to you?
It's going very perfect.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for the encouragement. Okay, I've got some more. Ah, this is interesting. Okay. Yeah, Arnav, you've told that you're working only with the big fours. How can it be brought down to the street level? Listen, this is a good question. I'm
Yeah,
working only
this
with
man personally message on our backend panel that please, dear, please ask my question first.
how sweet. How sweet. Very nice. Right. Yes. Look, we're working with the big four, but we're also working with you. I mentioned to you that there are some HIRA CAs that we are looking to work with. So this is level. We're looking to get involved with chartered accountants at a basic SEVA level. SEVA is socio-economic value. But if you wish to get involved, you have to do two things. You have to look at yourself as an auditor. You can't look at yourself as a practicing chartered accountant. You also have to look at yourself as a practicing entrepreneur. That's important. So once you look at yourself as an entrepreneur, everything changes. You're not just a service provider, you're a partner, you're a business partner to your client. How many CAs are seen as business partners by the clients? Very few. Very few business, entrepreneurs would have the kind of discussions with the CA that would have with business partners because they know that the CAs are interested only in governance, only in compliance. They're not looking at business planning. They're not looking at developing the business, moving into new areas, moving into new products, moving into new services, getting some clients together, attracting new business together. They're not having these discussions. So it is important to build some of these competencies that I mentioned to you so that you're able to speak that language of entrepreneurship and you're not just limited to your accounting practice, you're also looking at entrepreneurship as a practice. Okay. So once you do that, you can become a HIRA chartered accountant. Then you can get involved in these projects and take percentages, stakes in these projects. And this is your business. It becomes your business. So get involved. We're looking at the 1,000 HIRA villages very soon. Okay, so get involved. We need you. Second, okay, another question. Startups at the initial stage of organizing, etc. What is the role of chartered accountants in startups? Oh, yes. Um, Firstly, chartered accountants could help entrepreneurs in understanding corporate governance, what it means to develop corporate governance standards. It's very, very important. How do you keep your money separate from the company's money? Why should you keep your money separate from the company's money? Okay, in what ways do you do this? These are very, very practical discussions that you need to have with your startups because startups don't have experience in running businesses. So sometimes they mix up their money with the company's money. And then they have all sorts of problems. They're spending out on their credit cards and then they're claiming reimbursements, etc. So easily it cannot be seen. You don't have tally. Sometimes the accounts are not tally systems. They are not even uploaded properly. So there is no question of, there's no clear concept of auditing and that you have to keep your auditor separate from the chartered accountant. These are very, very simple, practical considerations that are very, very important for business creation and business development. And so chartered accountants have a very, very important role in bringing this awareness to. And you know what? You should also try and look at taking a small stake in the entrepreneur's business again. It'll be good if you do that. If you encourage not just getting paid for compliance, but if there is a possibility of even getting involved in the business as a partner. And that's why I was saying if CAs become social entrepreneurs themselves, if they set up businesses themselves or work on clients' businesses, take a small stake in the business, or look at setting up a complex where they become a shareholder in a larger business, like the ones we are discussing, I think it'll be great. You can then play a role directly in nation building. Okay, how a retired banker or a CA can involve with HIRA? Just apply. We retired. There's an IFS officer who's just coming with us for a presentation before the MEA, Ministry of External Affairs. He's doing this project in Zambia. So anyone can apply. We have a pensioners entrepreneurship program. You come in. Uh, if you come in uh, through ICAI, great. In fact, I mean, I'll be very happy to set some kind of a relationship with ICAI so that ICAI can promote the HIRA program in a structured way to its members, if the members are interested. So I'd be very happy to have a conversation with Devang and with his boss later, with the chair, to understand if they'd be interested in promoting a culture of entrepreneurship in chartered accountants in India. So there we can play a role. Certificate is from the United Nations. I'll just share with you the certification. One second. Let me just quickly share. This is what the certificate looks like. This is the only certificate that the United Nations offers to entrepreneurs. Mhm. So we've taken entrepreneurs to Geneva. We've had 6-day workshops, and after that, we've gone up to this. We've done some brainstorming. We've done excellent. We've had excellent brainstorming sessions, etc. So we get involved. Get involved. Just apply either with I would encourage apply through ICAI if there's a way that you can do this. That'd be great because then you could have a certification along with a UN certification for you. Uh, what is the turnover? So this is something that is technical. It's something that you will get easily from the website of the MSME. To go for startup business, when we approach banks for funding, they require previous business experience. How to overcome this issue? I was just talking to you about this. Best for funding is not bank finance, especially for startups. It's not bank money. As a startup, what you should do, what I would do for you is I would try and work on my behaviors, work on my practice in such a way that I would do an internship with with a slightly larger enterprise. And we have lots of heroes here who would be happy to bring you in as interns if you want to do internships. So you then do an apprenticeship where you actually are working with live money. Okay, it's not just a paper. It's not monopoly anymore. It's live money. It's real money. So you're working on a live project with real money. That's apprenticeship. Uh, the benefit of this is if you fail as an apprentice, no worries, you can get back up. No problem. And you haven't invested too much in setting up the business either, nor has your sponsor invested too much in you. So investment is minimal on both sides. So the risk is fairly mitigated. So there's moderate risk involved in this process. And as a result, you get very, very nice exposure in working with a senior entrepreneur. And once you get exposure, once you do well, then you say, "Sir, now give me a contract. I want to be in business." So you're starting with the market. You're not starting with a company and then find a market. You're starting with the market. Okay, you're starting with an entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is your market. Okay, so then that entrepreneur is able to um, sorry, I was just distracted with another question that just came in. So when you have that entrepreneur, you already have a contract. So, for example, for this Chuchu Amlang company in set up, it's designed as a complex where there are multiple stakeholders involved. It's 100 crores worth of contract even before we started work. How? That's because someone who's an entrepreneur who's already part of the complex he's offered the complex, he's offered the contract because he has access to market. So I would encourage you to look at partnerships, to look at public-private partnerships. Even if you can't get public component in, at least look at some partners that you can bring in together into some kind of a joint venture kind of a format, with the stakeholder being one of the stakeholders being the sponsor. So the sponsor can have a key component in your business. You set up a small business and ask your sponsor to take a small component of the business so that he can work with you and you can all grow together. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. It's one of the finest quotes that I have from the Empretech world. A rising tide lifts all boats. So if you're just focusing on your boat lifting up, it may not happen. It's a tide that we need to work on. And if we work on the tide together, then good things happen. All right, there's another question here. How to view corruption of government officials for startup business? So I'm not going to say anything here. You will know what to do. How do you deal with corruption? How do you deal with it? How do you deal with a corrupt officer or someone asking for an under-table payment? What do? You basically have a moral compass that will tell you what to do. So you don't need to come to a program to say, what should I do? We're all adults. Okay. So there is a moral compass in all of us. That compass is something we develop over a period of time. Part of it is generational. Okay. That's why the Mughals, the emperors, each of them behaved very badly towards their parents. Why? Because they saw their father behaving very badly towards his grandfather. So a part of it is acquired, and a part of it is hereditary. You really can't do much about it. So it is really up to you. It's whether you participate in a corrupt practice, whether you get involved in it, whether you're able to look at it as risk, whether you look at it as uncertainty, whether you look at it as something you manage, something you're able to manage, something that you should manage. It's entirely up to you. Okay. But there are consequences. That's why we say this is a program of decision making. So you'd have to be very, very careful about the kind of decisions that you're taking because these can have consequences. Okay. There's this whole system of ethics that we work with. And this is about the inner moral compass that we develop. It's extremely important to be able to understand that your moral compass is something that comes only from you. It doesn't come from anyone else. This moral compass cannot really be put in. There are some guidelines that can be placed, but ultimately you will have to interpret those guidelines. Just as in the judiciary, judges that interpret the law is the same, but the interpretation is everything. So you have to interpret your relationships and the contexts, and in all of those contexts, there needs to be some sort of a way in which you would conduct yourself. Those behaviors have to be very carefully chosen. Okay, all right. Now, yeah, I addressed all questions. Please provide the contact details of Arnob. I think you can always provide them my email address or something if anyone is interested. But as I said, Devang, I'd very much like to work with the ICAI so that ICAI can design this and introduce the HERA program for its forward-looking chartered accountants. There'll be about 1% chartered accountants who would really be interested involved in this nation building program. It's just that 1% we are interested in. We're not looking at mass. It's
Sir,
select.
you can give your number on this video also as well. Someone else, no problem.
It's fine. Shall I read it out in the chat? On the group chat? Okay, so 801752222. That's my number, or no at empretech dot is my email address. Just 1 second. Yeah. So I have my email address and my mobile number that I've placed here. Should anyone be interested, you could always write. And yeah, okay. So that's that. Devang, unless there are any other questions, any other pointers, anything
Yeah,
else?
there's a one last question which I'm going to share with you. Yeah, this is the last one.
Registration and compliance requirements in India, it's been very costly for startups to operate. I agree with you. It's a common question from all clients, how to handle this. Very, very good question. Very good question. Now, you know, we're a big value chains. Okay. If you find something very expensive to do as an entrepreneur, chances are you don't for it. That's why you find it expensive. Okay. If you already have a market, as I said, you start with the market. Don't start with the product. Start with the market. And then work backwards and design your product. If you do that, then, as I said, not just for registration, compliances, and all that, your client will actually help you, not just registering your business, but also giving you some monies in advance for you to run your development cycles. You see this? That's critically important. You start with the client in hand, a client who is already giving you business, right? Get involved in an internship. If you don't have track record, you say to the client, listen, I'd like to come in and like to do some work. No one likes to work with a lazy entrepreneur. A senior Hira will work with junior Hiras when the junior Hiras are saying that I'm going to get into a business, I'm going to make your business a better business. Then the senior Hira, come over, take a look. This is my business. Get involved. Tell me how you can make this better, faster, cheaper, etc. Remember the DEQ, they showed demand for efficiency and quality. This piece, everyone is interested in this DEQ because it's when we do demand for efficiency and quality, working on DQ, that is the key to profitability of a business. So if you are able, as a startup, you're able to help an MSME in developing DEQ, then DEQ, some of the profits that can be shared or some of the costs that can be saved, that can be shared with you. You can arrange with the client. It all is to do with relationship. In fact, in the MProtect program, we go over. I'm just doing a workshop now. Look, these are the kinds of relationships we work. These are equations we work. These are called. We refer to these as the Hira equations. An italic goal is purpose plus routines plus relationships. For example, heroism, excellence, altruism, discovery. So there's lots that we do. There's a lot that we work on ourselves. We invest a lot of this learning in ourselves so that we're able to get these contracts from entrepreneurs who then will prepay. Money is only a resource. You get resource from quality relationships if you've invested in yourself. Okay, so how do you handle this question? If you have to tell the uh, how to move up the value chain, you say to the client, listen, you need to be valuable to the next to someone who's higher up in the value chain so that that person is able to give you a prepaid contract. Try and work your way to a prepaid contract. It's like a prepaid sim. You have the talk time and you're already in it, right? So try and get yourself a prepaid. Baad mein, you can look at a postpaid connection. So initially for startups, I think you should look at prepaid connections because it's very difficult. I understand. You don't have the money, you don't have working capital, you don't have project finance, you don't have any of that. So that is one way. The second way is don't look at setting it all up yourself. Don't set up your own enterprise. Rather, get into an enterprise like the complex that I was discussing a little earlier. Take a 2% stake in a larger complex. Okay, take a 5% stake, take a 10% stake if you can, where someone else is doing the corporate governance, someone else is doing the startup registrations and all that. So you don't have to break your head over it. In our case, in the enterprise development services, Empretech is doing all the registrations. So you don't have to bother about it. You just get involved as a stakeholder. For that to happen, you need to go through the process. You need to build yourself up as a hero. Okay. All right. I hope
So,
that was
sir,
useful.
now it's time to pour a vote of thanks.
Say again, Devang.
I'm saying now it's time to give a vote of thanks. Close.
Okay.
like that.
You don't need to. This was very informal, so far as I'm concerned. Were there some people who came?
Yes, these all the questions which I shared with you, the people who are attending, they ask these questions from you.
Very nice. I'm really grateful. If I'm addressing them directly, I should just say that very grateful to you for your time and for your effort in investing in yourself. It's the only thing that you can really invest in is yourself. The investment worth paying particular attention to is the one that you will do with yourself. It's not the investment in gold, although we just had Dhanteras. You are to everyone. So it's not that investment which will help you in the long run. It's the investment that you make in your own mindset
Yeah,
that will actually help. So God bless. Devang Bhai, thank you very much for your invitation. I'm very, very honored and grateful to you. And I hope that we'll be able to work together.
yeah. Thank you, sir, so much. And on the behalf of the committee, I really give you thanks for giving us special time and give us so much wonderful session.
God bless.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
God bless.
Yeah, Manish, thank you so much from your side.